my ghost ghouls and goblins. Welcome to Cyclone of Fright, day number 24. And if you don't know which one you are, as usual, you're a ghoul. Not one word like the show Sinister, two words, a ghoul. Today I will be reading chapters 1 and 2 from my first book, Intrigued by Desire, in preparation for my second book, which is coming out on Monday, as whenever I anticipate that it will come out. So let's get cracking. Dang it! Lucy yelled as she opened her eyes to see the alarm clock flashing 12 a.m., even though she could see the sunlight coming through the window. She looked at her phone to see it was 8 a.m., and there were 2 missed calls, 3 texts, and a voice message. The first message said, "Where are you?" The second sent 10 minutes later, "Hello, your shift started 2 hours ago." And the third, "You better have a damn good excuse for why I'm still here 2 hours after my shift ended," which was followed by a pissed off emoji. After the last message, she didn't even want to hear whatever had been left on the voice message. Shit was definitely going to hit the fan when she got there. If it wasn't bad enough, the power had gone out in the middle of the night, her phone was on silent, and she had forgotten to set any of the alarms on her phone. Oh, and said phone was on 15%, because the USB cord wasn't plugged into the charger. So even if the power hadn't gone out, her phone still wouldn't have charged. What a great way to begin the morning. Might as well take a shower since I'm already late, she muttered to herself, as she pulled her red work shirt out of the closet, ransacked the top drawer to find a pair of black work pants, and grabbed some undergarments and socks out of the next drawer. 10 minutes later, she emerged, hurriedly threw some gel and mousse into her curly hair, and threw it up into a ponytail. There was no time to diffuse it, so it was up to fate if her curls would look good after they finished air drying. After brushing her teeth, putting on deodorant, and spraying on her favorite Vera's Secret perfume, she was finally ready to go. 15 minutes later, she was turning into the parking lot so quickly her tires screeched, as she barely avoided running into the giant neon orange Sunset Paradise Resort sign at the entrance. The last thing I need this morning is to crash my car and get fired, she thought as she parked and exited the car in a rush. As soon as she got into the building, she could almost feel the red-hot heat of her coworker Diane's eyes zeroing in on her. As she walked into the gift shop, Diane angrily whispered, "It's about damn time he showed up. I was supposed to pick up my kids from the babysitter's house 3 hours ago. I had to call the babysitter to say I'd be late for pickup, and now it's going to cost me $40 extra, which I don't have. All because somebody wanted to get some extra beauty rest this morning. Luckily, my replacement showed up on time, so I was able to open the gift shop for you." Diane was the night auditor, but she did occasionally pick up a shift or two in the gift shop, which came in handy when someone called off or showed up late. Lucy reached into her purse and pulled out 2 20s as she tried to explain she was sorry that her power had gone out. Her phone was on silent and her alarms weren't set. The money seemed to calm Diane a bit, but that didn't stop her from sarcastically commenting, "Luckily, Matt isn't going to be here today, so he doesn't know you're late. But even if he did, you'd just flash him those brown doe eyes, and he'd probably forget all about it, since he's got a thing for you." Lucy hated to admit it, but Diane wasn't lying. Matt's feelings for her were obvious to everyone who worked there. Chapter 2. My Life in Shadow Ridge. Luckily, it was a slow day with less than 100 people in house, so the hours would go by slowly, but at least hopefully she wouldn't have any customers screaming at her today. The gift shop she worked at was in between the lobby and the full-service restaurant, which served a buffet for breakfast. Oftentimes people would make remarks about how wrong it was that they were forced to walk through the toy section on their way to get their food. However, the actual entrance to the breakfast buffet was on the far side of the gift shop, near the elevators, and there were signs pointing towards breakfast, so walking through the gift shop wasn't a requirement. Either way, it's not as if she was the one who designed the place, so there was nothing she could do about the placement. And she certainly wasn't grabbing them by the ear and dragging them in to spend their hard-earned dollars. Just then, as if on cue, a group of people walked through, and one of the toddlers started to reach for a small stuffed animal on a table. She heard the person, whom she assumed was the mother of the toddler, mutter to herself, "Great, now I'm going to have to come back in and buy that overpriced toy, or there's going to be a meltdown." She smiled as a guest walked by, hoping maybe the child would forget about the toy, so later the lady wouldn't feel obligated to scold her for putting the toy in the child's line of sight. On a normal day, Lucy found waking up at 5 in the morning to get ready for work no fun to begin with, but being reprimanded by an irritated customer on a day that she was late would make this day even worse. Besides getting up before most, the birds started moving around in their nest. The job wasn't bad.
Her usual work hours were from 6 a.m. to 3 p.m., so at least she had a few hours after work to relax and unwind before repeating this process 4 days a week, and up to 6 during a busy season. Even during the slower months, when her days off were Tuesday through Thursday, her pay was still enough to pay all the bills at her small apartment, plus the typical groceries. Shadow Ridge was a very small town in southern Indiana, so there weren't many job opportunities that paid above minimum wage. She had lived here her entire life, and while the town had grown significantly since her childhood, it was still a small town. The population was less than 2,000 people. Besides the medium-sized hotel she worked at, there were two small gas stations, two fast food places, a Mexican restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, a pizza place, a grocery store, a 24-hour breakfast restaurant, two small hotels, the town library, a popular bowling alley with an indoor go-kart track, mini golf, and a laser tag place that was 2 stories tall that was owned by a famous former basketball player named Larry Hawk, and a large casino which was just outside the town limits in the next town over.
There used to be a small family-owned drive-in movie theater, but it just closed down a few years ago due to low revenue. The nostalgia townsfolk had simply couldn't keep up with the changing times. People were able to pay to watch movies that were still in theaters via streaming apps from the comfort of their homes. Customer service wasn't a glamorous occupation, but at 20, Lucy still had time to go back to college if she wanted to. She had taken a few basic classes at the community college a few towns over, but nothing had felt like her true calling. Instead of going into massive debt while trying to figure it out, for now she was content with making enough money to have a car and a place of her own. Her car was a used 2007 Pontiac Vibe with 130,000 miles, which wasn't too bad considering it was only 5 grand, which over the 24-month loan period only added up to a little over 250 a month, and with insurance it was around $340. Most of her days in the gift shop were spent folding shirts, returning items to their proper places, and wiping down every surface at least 5 times. Now, that might sound boring to some people, but as an introvert, it wasn't the worst job to have when conversational skills weren't a strong suit. Besides seating the occasional person for lunch and asking guests if they needed help finding souvenirs, there wasn't much beyond small talk required of her. Her coworkers were friendly enough, but the only one she saw out of work was Jaden, who also happened to be her best friend. They had been friends since middle school. Lucy, who was normally quiet and non-confrontational, had thrown a punch at Rachel Kingsley, the most popular girl in school, for calling the new student a gay slur. She got detention, but it was worth it to teach that hoity-toity not to be a homophobe. Jaden had ended up in detention too because a teacher overheard him call Rachel a word that rhymed with witch. Not that she didn't deserve it, but profanity in school was an automatic detention. Conveniently, no teachers had been around to hear what Rachel had said. Still, even if they had, Rachel wouldn't have gotten into any trouble because her parents were filthy rich and donated money to the school every year. In detention, they had bonded over the fact that neither of them felt like they fit in with the other people in town. Since she was in elementary school, she had dealt with subtle and sometimes overt racism as a result of being one of the only black people in Shadow Ridge. Indiana may have been part of the Union, but it certainly felt a lot like Shadow Ridge's citizens were convinced it had been part of the Confederacy. Jaden confided in her that his family had moved to Shadow Ridge from a small southern town in Texas after students, aka bullies, at his last school had vandalized his locker after finding out he was gay. She didn't have much experience in the area, but from what she had seen on TV and what he had told her, school could be tough for gay teens, especially ones without a supportive family, which was why statistics showed that many people would wait until after graduating to tell anyone. Hopefully someday times would change and people would be free to be as out and proud as Jaden without the threat of judgy bigots. Luckily, Jaden's family was supportive, so he had been comfortable enough to tell them. The school system, however, didn't share the same sentiments and had refused to suspend the students responsible, though his parents thought a fresh start might help. Thus, even though there were no fond memories of high school for either of them, at least they had found a sense of camaraderie. Without Jaden there to keep her company, the days seemed to drag on, until finally, after the 100th time she looked at the clock, it was 2:55. Hopefully her replacement wouldn't be late, which was a bit ironic, considering that she'd been late herself. Fortunately, the guest from earlier hadn't said anything when she came back in and bought the toy, so at least her workday wasn't going to end as bad as her day had started. Her replacement Molly showed up a few minutes later. At the end of her workday, the last thing she had to do was run a cashier's report and count down her bank. This report would show her how much money she had to deposit and put into the drop envelope. As long as the cash amount and her bank were both correct, things would be good. Sometimes there were computer errors that happened, such as the previous day's reports running together, or transactions being voided incorrectly, but those events rarely occurred. It wasn't a huge deal as long as she let Matt know and wrote a note on the drop envelope so it could be investigated further. Everything checked out, so she filled out the drop envelope and deposited it in the bank room. Now she was officially free to go home and enjoy the rest of her day. And that concludes chapter 2 of my book, Intrigued by Desire, which is available on Amazon in both print and ebook version. And like I said, my next book should be released on Monday, so there's that to forward. What? And the book will be called Embraced by Desire, and it's going to be the second part in my Raising the Stakes novella. And I hope that everyone will enjoy this first book, because hopefully you'll buy this first book and then go check out the second book whenever it drops. So, I hope all of you are having a very spectacular October and just a general spooky season in general. So, I think that I will let you guys go and let you guys enjoy the rest of your day. Have a nice day.